A new season of Love is Blind is finally here. That's right. Today we're breaking down all 6 episodes from week 1 of Love is Blind season 6. We've got drama, intrigue, some cute couples, and a dude who probably should have been cast as the Incredible Hulk in phase 1 of the MCU. Seriously, the guy's left arm is bigger than my head. What's going on, you guys? James here with another real recap. I'm giving you all my spoiler-free and spoiler-filled thoughts for week 1 of Love is Blind. We're back at it again. The 6th season of Love is Blind US is here, and I'm gonna be honest, it isn't bad. This time, though, we're following a new set of singles from Charlotte, North Carolina. They're ready to basically begin dating in the pods, getting engaged, going on their vacation, living together, and seeing if they'll make it to the altar to say I do or I don't. And then they say the sight unseen thing at the altar too. I don't know. By season 6, guys, we've already been through it. We've seen the highs and the lows for this entire series. But so far with week 1, yeah, there's a lot to talk about. So we're going to get into all of my spoiler-filled thoughts and the spoiler-free thoughts as well. There are time codes below if you want to skip ahead to your favorite part and hear me add some commentary to it. But before we get there, hey, if you haven't already, hit the big red button below, subscribe to the channel, tap on the bell, and like this video because that's right, I'm reviewing weeks 2, 3, and 4 as well. Because if you don't know, here's the breakdown of the schedule. Of course, week 1 starts now on February 14th, episodes 1 through 6. And then we got week 2, which is episodes 7 through 9. Can't speak. And that is on February 21st. And then on February 28th, we have episodes 10 through 11. And of course, the finale with episode 12 on Wednesday, March 6th. So if you don't know already, this is a weekly release type of thing. But man, oh man, am I excited. Thanks so much, Netflix, for giving me the chance to watch these early for review as well. Alrighty, you guys, so let's begin with my week 1 spoiler-free thoughts. So if you haven't watched all 6 episodes yet, don't worry, you're in the right spot. I'm not going to spoil anything. I gotta start by saying this, though. The energy this season among our contestants is really high. I mean, they're bringing the jokes, they're bringing the heartfelt moments, they're just always smiling and giggling, and of course, there's still drama. But I will say, this is so far probably the most tame season of Love is Blind yet. That's not to say it's the most boring, because we've all sat through season 4, but yeah, I will be honest with you, I like the contestants this time around versus even last season. It just feels like they're more real in a way. Now there are some contestants who made me scratch my head and I wondered where the heck did they pick them from. I'm looking at you, Matthew. But other than that, I will say this is a really decent lineup of contestants and so far, so good. I also like that from a technical aspect, this feels more put together than season 5. If you missed my recap and reviews there, you can go back and watch it if you like, but I will say, I found big issues with the way it was shot, the way it was color graded even, the lighting, and the music was so on the nose. Now, I will say, the music in season 6 is still very on the nose. I mean, there are songs that talk about loving in between the night and you know, oh my gosh, my heart yearns for you when they're talking about how much they love each other. It's so dramatic for no reason. Well, I mean, there's a reason. It's to make us laugh, I guess. But I will say, from a cinematography standpoint, they've nailed it. Maybe they had more time to film season 6. I don't know, but it's much better than season 5, so I hope they keep doing this. And like I just mentioned, the drama definitely kicks in during episode 2 with some messy edits that really try to paint certain contestants as villains or snakes. There's really only one sort of snake I can pick out. Everyone else was pretty good in the women's and the men's quarters. Now, there is one dude, like I mentioned, that is very much a villain this season, and I can't wait for his after the altar moment, or the reunion show, excuse me, because when we get to the reunion show, and this guy shows up, there are going to be some words that these women are going to have with him. Now, this isn't a perfect season so far of Love is Blind. There are some drawbacks that I think actually hinder the experience overall. While our contestants are in the pods, I feel like they talked a lot more about their physical attributes than ever before. And doesn't that defeat the purpose of Love is Blind, you know, to see if you love each other sight unseen? But if you're talking about your physical attributes, you're already having this preconceived bias that the person you might propose to is going to look a certain way, and that could change the way you view the person you're speaking to through the wall. So I don't know. I don't love that. There were some conversations that were had between a couple of contestants where they were trying to guess each other's hair color, the hair length, how tall you are, how short you are, whether you're built, let's say that. And this is coming from one guy whose name is Clay, but yeah, I don't know. To me, it feels like it defeats the purpose. Now, are there moments where they sort of redeem themselves in a way? Sure, but I don't know. Producers got to really start to set a certain standard, like, guys, no more talk about your physical attributes. It does not help the show's, I don't know, integrity. So I really hope they kind of get it together for season 7. And my last note in this spoiler-free section for week 1 is the fact that episode 3 is probably the most boring episode of the bunch from episodes 1 through 6. The pacing totally falls apart, the momentum is lost, and everything that happens in the pods, it makes me want to go to sleep, guys. And I believe it was at this point where the show starts to focus a little bit more on Jeramey, and I don't really care about Jeramey's moments. Not that I don't care about Jeramey, I don't know him, but it's the way that they edit around these moments that makes it so uneventful, and it really is a momentum killer. So episode 3 gave me some pause, but they do pick it up with episode 4 through 6, and especially in episode 6. That was, for OG Love is Blind fans, you look at episode 6 and you're probably thinking, all right, strapping in, grabbing my popcorn or my Love is Wine chalice. Yeah, they apparently sell Love is Wine now. That's weird, but yeah, man, it gets pretty intense in episode 6. Alrighty, you guys, so that's all I have for the spoiler-free section for my week 1 commentary. Guys, you're going to want to pause this, save it to your watch later list, and come back again if you have not watched week 1. This is your one and only spoiler warning. If you try and watch anything past this, there are going to be things that are spoiled for you, and I don't want that to happen. So again, subscribe to the channel, come back after you watch all of week 1 of Love is Blind season 6, and tell me all about what you think transpired. Like, do you agree with some of these decisions? Do you not? Oh, there's so much to talk about because I want to know, okay? What do you think is the most dramatic moment yet? Oh man, I got some answers. Alrighty guys, so let's go ahead and dive right into my spoiler-filled thoughts for week 1. And we're going to begin with this section, all of the moments in the pods. So there are some one-off things I want to comment on, and that is the fact that, hey, the Lachey's are back. To no one's surprise. I mean, was anyone really surprised that Nick and Vanessa Lachey are coming back for Love is Blind? Here's to hoping that they sort of learn from the past, that they have to host the reunions and the After the Altar specials better. I hope that's the case. If that doesn't happen, fine, whatever, par of the course. But I really hope that they learn how to be better hosts. I did notice that they were fairly absent for most of week 1. So not the worst thing. Not saying I don't like them. I just don't think they do a great job hosting this show. So yeah, the Lachey's are back. Fine. I do want to talk about a couple of notes that I have here. The men's and the women's living quarters. Listen, this is where you expect some of that drama to go down, or most of it really. And it was, like I mentioned earlier, pretty tame. And I don't necessarily know what happened. Did they just maybe make them sign something that says, hey, don't be so catty. Hey, guys, don't be so overly dramatic and egotistical. Let's just chill and have a good time together. Well, that happened for the most part. There were some instances where wow, there was a lot going on. But then there were other moments where I'm like, all right, maybe they're a little too comfortable. Like Mackenzie saying she pees in the pool and in the shower. That's just gross. What are we, 5? So after everyone gets to know one another, you know what comes next, guys. A pods montage, and we got to see some of our individual contestants sort of go through this carousel of men and women. And, well, I have a couple outstanding notes for 2 individual contestants before we get into the couples and their dates. Let's start with Matthew. Matthew, you're an interesting individual. And I don't know how you want to take that, but you can read between the lines there. Matthew had a list of 15 questions. I think it was 15 questions that he sat down and read and said, pick a number, any number. And then someone like, I think Amber would say, give me number 4. And then he would read off the question. And if that person would try to then ask that question back to Matthew, like Jessica did, he'd get up and leave. literally in the middle of their answer. It was very weird. Actually, correction from the editing room. This is Sarah Ann's answer that he walked out on. The man has some nerve, and he comes across very cold and jerkish. I don't know. And then eventually, AD, who says she doesn't usually date walking red flags, begins to sort of fawn over Matthew and connect with him. Very interesting. I don't date red flags, but I'm willing to pick up this one. It's just very odd behavior to me. Yeah, I don't necessarily know if I agree with AD falling for Matthew's little trap, but in a way, Matthew was playing her, and she unfortunately played along with him, and Matthew was like, not it. But we'll get more into Matthew and AD as we get into the couple's moments, excuse me. So now let's dive into our very first pod couple, and that is Chelsea and Trevor. Trevor is that dude we talked about in the intro of this video who looks like he's ready for a Mr. Olympia competition. The man is 7'15", if that's even possible, and has a dog named Chelsea. Well, he actually said that to Chelsea, and I don't know if that should be flattering or not, but then Chelsea says her dog's name is Trevor too. Lord. But they found it to be cute, so whatever works for them. Now, Trevor honestly is very understanding of Chelsea here, because Chelsea seems to be unpacking a lot with those whom she has pod dates with. And yeah, you know what? I get it, because she has a lot of childhood trauma. However, it seems like sometimes she lets that interfere with connecting with certain contestants on the show, but Trevor is very open and he's got a soft heart. I mean, he might be a tall, hulkish figure, but the man is really soft on the inside, it seems. Especially when Chelsea drops this bombshell that she apparently had been married once and has an ex-husband. Wow. Well, that's not the only bombshell we'll be talking about during week 1, but when Chelsea said this, Trevor's like, I get it, bro. Not everyone's meant to be perfect or fine. And then Trevor eventually tells Chelsea that he loves her. So sweet, because Chelsea says it back, right? Right? Wrong. Chelsea doesn't say it back, so I raised my eyebrows, and of course I made that note. Eventually, they begin to continue their dates, and they give each other gifts later on as we get towards the tail end of the pod dates. Now, Chelsea's bracelet gift was weird. I say that with love. It was weird. I'm not saying that it was a wrong gift to give, but it's this bracelet when you tap it, it's supposed to let the other person who has a matching bracelet know that you're thinking of them, because then the receiver's bracelet vibrates. What? It's not very practical, but Trevor seemed to love it. So eventually we get closer and closer to the very end of their time together, and Trevor's gonna propose, y'all. But here's the thing. There's a little bit of a love triangle going on here, you guys, between Chelsea, Jimmy, and Trevor, because Jimmy loves Chelsea, Trevor loves Chelsea. Chelsea can't make up her mind, and she's always about to throw up for some reason when people tell her that she's loved. It's like, come on, girl, hold it together. But Trevor is going to propose. The thing is, Chelsea was like, I can't do it with you, homie. I can't. So she tells him, hey, I can't give you all of me right now. And Trevor's very confused because, you know, he already figured in her mind, you chose someone else over me, and was questioning her and asked her a simple question. Hey, if I had told you maybe earlier that I loved you, or if I proposed to you earlier, would you have said yes? And she couldn't answer the question, which is probably pretty bad, because that could mean that Chelsea does have those lingering feelings for Trevor. It's just that she picked somebody else because they asked her to marry them first. So maybe this is a good time to get into the ever-confusing relationship between Chelsea and Jimmy, in the pods at least. So early on, Jimmy and Chelsea clearly have a connection. Jimmy himself is between Chelsea and Jessica at this point, but this is the Chelsea section, so we're gonna stay with Chelsea. Chelsea reveals to Jimmy, hey, I was married at a young age, at 18. Jimmy then says he's going through it with this news and the news that Jessica dropped, which we'll talk about in a little while. But Jimmy reveals that, hey, listen, this isn't the scariest thing I've heard all day, okay? I've heard something that scared me even more, referring to Jessica's news. So they get to talking, flirting a little bit more, and Chelsea says, you know who people say I look like? Megan Fox. Listen, did we not just hear somebody compare themselves to Megan Fox in season 5 of Love is Blind? Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but people, stop setting up these expectations of what you'll look like physically to these people who cannot see you through the wall. Again, you're setting yourself up for disaster. So more time goes by and eventually Chelsea is smitten, and then Jimmy says, yo, I'm falling for you. And Jimmy's already at this point expressing more feelings here for Chelsea than he is with Jessica, so keep that in mind for when we get to the Jimmy and Jessica section. And then he tells Chelsea, I love you. And Chelsea doesn't say it back. So at this point I'm thinking maybe she's got a little earbud and the producers are like, hey Chelsea, don't say I love you. It gives us more viewership retention. So if that's the case, fine. But man, I'm like, Chelsea girl, you almost threw up 2 times because Jimmy and Trevor said they love you. You gotta eventually make a decision, and quick. Well, she does, because Jimmy gets down on one knee and Chelsea says, yo Jimmy, I'm seeing you before Trevor and I already made my mind up. I'm gonna say yes. So she says, of course I'll marry you, 1000%, something like that. And to be honest, I thought she would choose Trevor. So remember what I said? Trevor was like, yo, if you would have saw me earlier, if I would have proposed to you earlier, would you have chosen me? I do think Chelsea and Trevor were more compatible than Jimmy and Chelsea, but that's just me. So it's, I don't know, I feel bad for Trevor, you know? So we've got one engagement already in the pods. Will AD and Matthew make it too? I'm gonna go ahead and get ahead of this and tell you guys absolutely not. So this is how it went down. Like we just mentioned, AD was smitten by Matthew, right? And Matthew himself is a very odd individual. He's not somebody who I would say in the real world, many women would probably be like, yo, this guy is so cool. He's just being a jerk. No, okay? Now, do some guys, and you know, they get girls by being jerks, sure, but we live in a day and age now where I would hope that many women would be like, yo, this guy's being a real big jerk. No thank you. So eventually AD and Matthew are of course connecting well, and Matthew says to AD, there are only 2 outcomes. I'm either with you or I'm not. And I'm thinking, these are the most words this man's uttered already in these pod moments. So Matthew continues to just give AD these compliments and tell her that his biggest accomplishment, his greatest accomplishment in life is finding AD. That's another red flag. Like, slow down, buddy. You literally just met her 2 nights ago, and now she's your greatest accomplishment. She could be, maybe, if y'all get married and then you guys have kids. You know what I mean? But, like, in 2 nights, that's your greatest accomplishment? Like, all right. And honestly, at this point, I was ready to think, yeah, I guess if you know, you know, right? But then we learn a little bit more in the women's living quarters that AD and Amber were told the same thing by Matthew the villain. That's right, you might as well put a little cowl on him now. He's a villain, bro. 100% the villain of season 6 so far. So AD confronts Matthew and says, yo, did you tell Amber literally the same exact thing that you told me about proposing and running away with me? And Matthew's like, it's not entirely true. Now Matthew, I think, is lying through his teeth, okay? In no universe do I believe Matthew. I do believe Amber, that Matthew told Amber everything that Matthew then told AD. So he's trying to play both sides of the fence. Can't do that, bro. So shortly after this, Matthew starts taking a ton of swings for the fences and says, I have all of America on my side. Like, AD, drop him. Like, who's America? I don't know. I don't know her because I am not on your side, Matthew. What are we talking about? And then Matthew eventually gets frustrated because AD's not buying any of this and tells AD, I'm done and I'm gonna run away. And eventually we find out he runs away to try and find Amber. Oh man. But good for AD for telling Matthew, you know what? No, I'm done, bro. I have another connection. And who's that other connection? Well, if it isn't Clay himself in tech sales, I think it is. So AD and Clay honestly have more chemistry than AD and Matthew. Is it awkward when they flirt? Sure, that moment was really weird, but you can tell AD is smitten by Clay, and Clay is vibing heavily with AD. Now, again, they're the couple that talks about their physical attributes that they love, and I don't agree with it. And then Clay says some things that are a little out of pocket, where he is sort of putting these expectations on AD, and it hurts AD's feelings. Again, they should not have been playing this game anyway by talking about their physical attributes, but they went there. So, of course, one was meant to be upset over the other, and that happened to be AD. But props to Clay for at least saying, hey AD, I'm sorry for the way that I spoke. I am definitely going to be growing through this. I gotta mature, and I'm not in it for the physical, I'm in it for the mental and the emotional. which is okay. And then there was a clear moment where AD totally switched up and got real lovey-dovey with Clay after Matthew's nonsense. AD says Clay feels like home, and I'm like, oh my gosh, AD is in love with this man. But shortly after that, Clay gets very upset at AD for finding out that he's in a love triangle with Matthew and AD. I guess it was in this moment where all day really meant all day stress for Clay, because now he's sitting there crying, which is not a problem. It's okay, men crying is fine. It's just he's really frustrated, and I honestly get it. But then Clay's ego starts to get in the way, and Clay's like, Matthew? But you know what I mean? He keeps like comparing himself to Matthew and is like, I'm better than that guy, you know, like that sort of, you know, rhetoric. Not great. Now, I'm no therapist, but if I had to guess here, I think Matthew was originally AD's #1 choice, and then she found out about Amber and went to Clay. But again, Clay was probably keen to this and was not a fan of being that second fiddle to Matthew. But Clay came to his senses and realized, listen, okay, this is a dating experiment game, so let me get back in the pods and apologize. And he did, because he cursed at AD, and AD said that triggered her. So I'm kind of glad that Clay apologized. There was growth here, you know what I mean? One thing I do hope Clay does is not just get better for AD, but also get better for himself, because he's got to do a lot of internal work. Now, AD eventually gets to the point where she says, yo, Clay is my man. And I'm thinking, okay, we're going back and forth here. This feels like a pickleball tournament. So on the big day where Clay finally makes this decision and he knows he's gonna propose to AD, and AD of course makes up her own mind too, they get in the pods together. Clay sits down, he's given all these compliments to AD, and then pulls out his Bible and reads from the book of Proverbs, one of my favorite books in the entire Bible, and one of my favorite scriptures is what he picked, chapter 3, verses 5 through 6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not onto your own understanding. Seek his will in all you do, and he will show you which path to take. It's beautiful. I'm sorry if my tongue got a little twisted there, but let me tell y'all, love that bit of scripture. So after all that with Clay and AD, it's time to go back to Jimmy and Jessica. Oh my. Let me tell you, they had quite a journey in the pods. Sorry, I'm still scrolling through my notes here. My goodness, there's a lot of notes to get through. But Jimmy and Jessica, like I mentioned earlier, they hit it off, right? I mean, it was always Jimmy and Jessica, and Jimmy also liked Chelsea, so there was a connection that Jimmy had with a couple different girls in the pods. Now, Jessica's biggest secret was she has a 10-year-old daughter out of wedlock. So, of course, Jessica does what any woman would probably do here and not tell their partner. Wait, what? Yeah, no. She should have probably told Jimmy right away, right? Yeah, probably. But because Jimmy was Jessica's #1, she said, whatever, I'm not going to say anything until he gets to know me as an individual first. Fine. But having a daughter already is a big deal. Now, right away, I could tell that Jessica was head over heels for Jimmy way before Jimmy was for Jessica. She even called him her husband. And then when they get to a certain point, she finally tells Jimmy about her daughter Autumn, and he says, well, Jessica, it's not a deal breaker for me. Well, he says that, but his actions tell otherwise, because from that point on, it was a turning point for Jimmy. I think he fell out of love with Jessica there. Jimmy is not handling this very lightly, and he's shocked. He's beginning to kind of come around every now and then, but right when he feels like he's ready to take those next steps with Jessica, something's holding him back. And I think it's probably the fact that Jimmy doesn't want to get involved in a complicated situation, which is sort of unfair for Jessica because she shared her story, and her story, man, it's really powerful. And I do feel bad for Jessica because she didn't have a great home life and didn't have really good role models with her parents. So yeah, this was really tough for Jessica growing up. And yeah, was it a little unfair that Jimmy sort of used this against her? Probably. But now we're getting into the desperation heaves by Jessica because she continues to say, Jimmy, you're my #1 draft pick, that's my man, and even writes a really heartfelt letter for Jimmy. I mean, getting into all of her heartfelt feelings for Jimmy in this one letter, and it is beautiful, beautifully written too. But Jimmy, after reading it, I think it was at that point where he knew, he's like, oh, I gotta check out. If I'm not 100% in this, even if I'm 99% in this, I can't do it. And I do think, really, Jimmy's only hang-up was the fact that she has a daughter. So Jimmy needs to make a decision because Jessica's already feeling a tad bit uneasy because Jimmy already told her, I don't know if I can tell you what you want to hear at this point. So it's getting really, really dire right now for Jessica. And eventually, we get back to the women's living quarters, and Laura tells Jessica that she should probably leave because she was told that Jimmy chose Chelsea. Now, is Laura being a little bit of a snake here? Maybe. But it was really Chelsea that whispered it to Laura, so that, right? So I don't know, y'all. It's a little touchy here. It's a touchy situation. But yeah, so Jessica's really, really sad, gets back in the pods, and Jimmy says, yo, Jessica, you're going to be an amazing wife to someone else. And it's at that point where Jessica already knows, dang, you're really going to leave? All right, fine. So Jimmy ends up leaving Jessica, but before she could, get out of the pods, she had to say her piece to Jimmy and let him know, when you see me, you're going to need an EpiPen. And I said, an EpiPen? Girl, come on, you're hyping yourself up here. But do I blame Jessica for being really upset at Jimmy? I don't, because I think Jimmy handled it a little weird, and he's just not the best at explaining his own feelings, so yeah, Jessica was left feeling kind of let on. Nah, poor Jessica. Well, there's always the reunion, where I'm sure they're gonna have good conversation. Alrighty, so let's move on to Amy and Johnny, guys. Alrighty, Amy and Johnny. I'm gonna be honest with you guys. I give you a favorite couple every week, and this week's favorite couple for me is Amy and Johnny. They're just so genuine together. You can tell right off the bat that they both were smitten by one another, and Johnny even goes as far as to write a song for Amy. But why? Why do they keep doing this on Love is Blind? Remember Kwame with the little guitar? Johnny wrote a song for Amy and just starts singing it, and okay, it's fine, it's cute, they're both getting a kick out of it, but it's a little cringe. And what I love is that Amy was being incredibly real with Johnny and let him know that, hey, if it comes to it, my brother might need a caretaker if my dad can't do it anymore, because I believe Amy's brother is autistic. And if I'm wrong, I'm sorry, but I believe that's what Amy said. So, hey, Johnny did the mature thing, right? And the thing that I was hoping he would do, which is, yo, I'm with you. I'm with you to help support your brother any way that I can. I want to be there to help. And I thought that was really sweet. And such a contrast to Jimmy, huh? Such a contrast. But anyways, Johnny ends up saying, yo, I love you. And then Amy says, yo, I love you back. And Johnny gets down on one knee and says, will you marry me? And what does Amy say? Of course she says no. I'm kidding. She says yes. So there you have it, guys. 2 engaged couples already? Oh, man, we're on a roll, right? Let's move on to Jeramey and Laura. And yeah, they're kind of hitting it off. But Jeramey is also a little bit of a dork here, okay? And maybe a little immature as well. We'll talk about that during the couples meetup in the Dominican Republic. But Jeramey guessed Laura was Sarah Ann. I made that mistake one time, and I think Laura must have scared him straight, because he never made that mistake again. Now, I'm going to be honest with you guys, all of Jeramey's moments are incredibly boring, so between his moments in the pods with Laura and with Sarah Ann, I was struggling to keep my eyes open. I mean, seriously, their moments probably could have been left on the cutting room floor. It just incredibly boring. But eventually Jeramey's like falling head over heels for Laura, and I don't even know if Laura feels the same way, because at that point maybe she was like, yo, I'm leaving here with something. So Jeramey gets down on one knee and Laura's like, yo, let's do this thing. So everyone's so excited. Oh my gosh. Not me, I'm not excited. So of course Jeramey had to tell Sarah Ann, listen, I'm moving on to Laura. And Sarah Ann was really upset, because even at one point Sarah Ann said she was gonna marry Jeramey, and I honestly think the show was trying so hard to make them happen with all the edits, and it wasn't really working. I can just tell that they were 2 incredibly different people from an ideological standpoint. Even Jeramey, very progressive, at least in the things he said about abortion, and Sarah Ann came out and said she's a big conservative, and that's a quote from her, a huge patriot, she said. And listen, I got friends that are Democrats, I got friends that are Republicans, fine. I just, there were some instances where I'm like, the vibes were giving, if you know what I mean. Alrighty, also the dominoes are starting to fall. Some more couples are getting engaged. This is a good sign for Kenneth and Brittany, right? You're right. It is a good sign. Man, listen, Amy and Johnny, number 1. Kenneth and Brittany, like 1B. Like, they're right there, guys. Kenneth and Brittany are so darn sweet together. And not only are they sweet, but they share some amazing things in common, like their love of God. I think that's great. They go to church. Kenneth is a worship leader at church. Come on, man. Love that. And listen, they both just, you could tell they're just so genuine with one another. Brittany and Kenneth said they also share the same view that they want to wait until marriage to get physically intimate, if y'all catch my drift. So eventually they spend more time together, and Kenneth knows in his heart of hearts that he can't wait any longer, and he proposes to Brittany, who says yes. Now, this is a big deal for Kenneth too, because this is the first time he's dating outside of his race. Now, Kenneth is a black man and Brittany is a white woman, so listen, when it comes to interracial relationships, I understand that there are outside voices that will try to kind of take control of your relationship, but if it is God who brought y'all together, don't let what man might say to try to like break y'all apart. No. Alrighty? So I'm glad that they're not even, I mean, they're thinking about it, but they're not letting it affect them. So yeah, they're engaged. It's great. And that's all the notes I have for the moments in the pods, you guys. So I want to now move on to our engaged couples and their reveals, because there were some really cute moments. Let's start with Amy and Johnny. Now they're kissing. I'm for real, y'all. They I don't know, maybe the mic was turned up to an 11, but I'm like, well, oh my goodness. You guys have been waiting for this moment clearly for a little while now. But honestly, the time after the reveal, it was just so sweet, the conversations they had. You can tell that they did a good job picking one another. And when it comes to Kenneth and Brittany, who we just talked about, they're so giggly. They're just so grateful. They're so thankful to have met one another and now are engaged. It just feels like it's gonna work. Seriously, y'all. I'm pulling for Kenneth and Brittany and Amy and Johnny. Honestly, I want to see them get married so bad. And of course, it be a healthy marriage after all. And then there's Clay and AD. And I don't know who in the post-production phase thought it was okay to use music that was so incredibly dramatic. Like, what were they trying to play up? That one of them is gonna leave? No, that's not gonna happen. So Clay's really feeling himself, of course, and AD's head over heels. They're waiting for the doors to open, and boop, doors open. And yeah, of course, Clay with his all day, and then AD with her, oh, Clay, like, you know, okay. It's supposed to be like a play on words. Y'all get it. But man, they are the most physical couple so far. Like, you can, yeah, yes, you guys gotta watch it to believe it. But yeah, they're very physical. And then Clay continues to do this thing where he calls himself a big baby and, you know, being coddled and stuff. And that's cute to be cuddled and stuff. And then I'm thinking like, huh, you know, maybe he is just the big baby. He threw a temper tantrum in the pods. Okay, let me not get ahead of myself. And then we have Jimmy and Chelsea during their reveal. And man, there were some things that happened before the reveal that's going to be very interesting to watch on playback. Yeah, Jimmy's going to regret this one, y'all. So in his testimonial before, of course, he sees Chelsea, he says this, and I quote, "I've never been so sure that Jessica," and then he stops himself and he's like, no, not Jessica, Chelsea. And I'm like, boy, I don't know. Is Jessica still on your mind? It sounds like it. And right before the doors open, what do you think Chelsea does? Yes, she basically says she's going to throw up again. Like, what are we doing here? She needs to, you know how like women have like Stanley cups and stuff? She needs to have like a Stanley cup, but like a garbage can, just in case she's got to like, you know, throw up. It's pretty gross. But yeah, Jimmy sees Chelsea, they're kissing and stuff, and then they awkwardly transition to the bench and they sit down, and Jimmy, let's just say he's not very good at expressing himself, and if he is, then maybe he's got to do a better way of communicating. Jimmy tells Chelsea that he almost went home that morning of their reveal, and how confusing for Chelsea. Of course, Chelsea says, I didn't want to hear that, and I don't blame her. And Jimmy says a lot of things that Chelsea doesn't want to hear as we get into our Dominican Republic portion of this recap, but we're not there yet. We got one more reveal to talk about, and that is Jeramey and Laura. Man, I'm just as confused by Jeramey and Laura's connection as I am by the way Jeramey spells his first name. It's Jeramey. My autocorrect was having a fit with me, but I'm confused because they don't work. Laura says, you are handsome, and that felt really weird. And all their conversation was just odd to me. I just don't think they're gonna last. Like, if I had to make a prediction, they would be the one that I would be like locked in. I just don't see it, you guys. I just don't. But you know what? That's all said and done. We are moving on to our vacation in the Dominican Republic. República Dominicana. I'm so excited to get in there, y'all, because this was the most dramatic portion of the entire first week. So we got 4 weeks until weddings, you guys, and we gotta start with Jimmy and Chelsea because their moments in the Dominican Republic were kind of crazy. Seriously, the minute Jimmy sees Chelsea, that they go to the hotel, and then Jimmy says, "Yo, I totally forgot what you look like, dude." I'm like, bro, you forgot what your fiance looked like? And Chelsea, of course, tells Jimmy, I didn't forget what you look like. What? So they're having conversation, and Jimmy's just bringing up the worst things to bring up. He's got no real awareness, I want to say, because he's already starting to talk about Jessica. Yo, Jimmy, girls don't want to hear about your exes, okay? Even those who you were literally one date away from marrying. So what are we doing here? I'm guessing Jimmy still feels guilty about how things went down between Jessica, or on the other hand, maybe Jimmy still has feelings for Jessica, which would be terrible for Chelsea. And meanwhile, this entire time that they are spending in DR so far, it's Chelsea looking for affirmation, confirmation of Jimmy's feelings towards her, and he's not really giving that, so Chelsea's a little confused here. If Jimmy was a pitcher in baseball, he'd be throwing a lot of curveballs. And we also learned that Chelsea in these moments is really self-conscious about her physical appearance. And the first thing that Jimmy said he had noticed about Chelsea was her chest. And Chelsea's like, yo, I noticed your eyes first. You really, you're gonna go there? I mean, if Jimmy's something, he's honest, I guess, but man. So now let's move on to Jeramey and Laura. So listen, guys, you remember how I mentioned Jeramey feels kind of like a kid? Yeah, he's kind of immature here. He's like blowing raspberries while kissing Laura. It feels really immature to me, and I just don't think they feel serious at all. I don't see it. I really don't. And every moment we spend with them on screen, it reaffirms that thought in my mind, that they're just not compatible together. And hey, listen, love is blind. The experiment works and sometimes it doesn't, right? And of course, we're not forgetting about Kenneth and Brittany in the Dominican Republic. Man, they came out looking fly. Kenneth says that, listen, we're going to be, natural with one another. We're going to be honest with one another. This is going to be a good time. And he even goes as far as to say this. Before they go to sleep every night, Kenneth wants them both to just tell each other about their days, what went well, what you want to talk about, what's on your mind, and what didn't go so well. It feels like they're not going to bed carrying any luggage, and that is so nice. And you know what, Kenneth, that is what a man of God should do. So cool. I honestly do think Kenneth is the most mature man on this show so far, and I will say, I think they're the most safe couple as well, and that's not a bad thing. So now we're going from a safe couple to a spicy couple because Clay and AD, I guess you could say they are very physical all day. Get it? It's a play on AD's nickname that was given to her by Clay. Anyway, they have some time to themselves in the pool and at the bar, and Clay tells AD, listen, you look great, XYZ, physically you're amazing. And AD's like, well, what if this all goes away? And Clay says, I would tell you to get into the MFing gym if you got out of shape. Bro, first of all, work on that cursing. Second of all, what are we doing? You gotta be softer than that. And AD, of course, said, yo, this wasn't nice. The way you said that wasn't nice. I don't like that. It feels like AD is more mature than Clay, even though sometimes AD plays into Clay's immaturity, if that makes sense. But Clay does admit, listen, I love when you challenge me. I'm glad that you're calling me out, and I'm gonna get better. Again, hopefully Clay does this for himself first to make himself a better partner then for AD. And lastly, Amy and Johnny, who were oddly kind of absent during a lot of these scenes during our vacation moments in the Dominican Republic. They're still my favorite couple, but I will say, I mean, I don't know, not many notes for them. Seriously, they look good together, but the edits didn't really favor them, if that makes sense. We didn't see them on screen, and maybe that's a good thing. But they definitely were absent during the couples meetup, so let's get into that now, because our couples, they all get together one night in the Dominican Republic to reconvene, and there's no dramatics, right? Wrong. But I do want to start with a really sweet moment, and that was Kenneth bringing over an entire bench for Brittany because there wasn't enough space with the other 4 girls. And man, Kenneth, again, that's a man of God, taking care of Brittany and being thoughtful. We love to see it, and so do the other girls, because you could tell they were instantly like, my man doesn't do that for me. Maybe not a good thing for the other guys. However, during these moments where all the girls and the guys were huddling up, I found it really weird that Amy wasn't sitting with the girls and Johnny wasn't with the guys. So what gives? But the most uncomfortable moment in this couples meetup was when, of course, everyone's maybe 2 or 3 or 5 tequilas in, and things start to come out. And it might be the truth in Jimmy's case. Jimmy tells Chelsea that, yo, AD is, and I quote, absolutely stacked. Yeah, they drunk. So after that, of course, Jimmy did what any logical person would do and then go to talk to the girl in which he just complimented in front of his fiancée. And you can tell Chelsea was really insecure about it. And then they have a really long conversation. And to me, I don't think it's appropriate. It's a little bit inappropriate. Honestly, I don't love that. And I understand Chelsea's insecurity in that moment because it felt weird. And then Jimmy said, listen, I'm not done. I'm going to go and strike out again. And tells Laura, you know you were my first date. And he says this right in front of Chelsea. Like I mentioned, this man has zero situational awareness. What are you doing? And I think this is him maybe drunk and not thinking properly or clearly. But it's weird and it's making Chelsea upset. But enough about Jimmy. Let's talk about AD and Kenneth having a conversation of their own. This time, I would say, an appropriate length conversation. Yeah, they had a good conversation too, and it was practical. Kenneth and Brittany, of course, if they do decide to have children, are gonna have to raise mixed children, black children, and AD's like, yo, Kenneth, can Brittany do that? And Kenneth was, confident that he's still pro-black, even though he's going to hopefully, in his eyes, get married to a white woman. So we'll see, we'll see what happens, but I have a funny feeling they're setting this up for the fact that Kenneth's family might have an adverse reaction. But this is Love is Blind. Who are we kidding? We can't have natural conversations like this. We got to get back to the theatrics and dramatics, guys. So Jeramey is sitting with some of the guys and the girls, and Laura gets very mad at him. Apparently, Laura made some sort of joke to Jeramey like, hey, go and bean dip AD, which is like flicking her chest. Not okay. Not my words, their words. It was weird. Clay wasn't happy about it. AD wasn't happy about it. And AD even tells Laura that, yo, my man wasn't happy. And Laura's like, yo, I'm so sorry. This was a joke. Jeremy's giving me small child vibes. It wasn't meant to be shared with anybody. So Laura presses him on it. And Jeremy's like, you know what, bro? What are we doing? I'm so upset right now. It was a joke. I thought you were with me. I want to go home. And Laura said, home like home or home like go back to the hotel? And Jeramey says home. So I have a funny feeling in week 2, Jeramey and Laura are going to split. Yeah, I see it. And right before the very end of episode 6, we end on a cliffhanger because Chelsea and Jimmy had their first big argument since the pods. Chelsea said, yo, Jimmy, you're making me uncomfortable. The fact that you were with AD for so long and you were kind of staring at her and made those comments, it was so odd to me. Even though Chelsea did sort of play into that comment that Jimmy made about AD being quote unquote stacked. So Chelsea was also kind of wrong here. But Jimmy is not very empathetic and understanding of his partner's feelings, and I think that's what's getting under Chelsea's skin. So do I think they'll last too? No. So maybe this is a good time for me to give you a little bit of my predictions right before we end this video. I know it's getting late, right? But if I had to make a guess after week 1, who is going to last, I have these predictions. Amy and Johnny, Kenneth and Brittany, Clay and AD will all get married and say I do. Jimmy and Chelsea, Jeramey and Laura, nah, I don't think they'll last. I think the wild card though of the 3 I mentioned that will say yes is probably Clay and AD. Something tells me that AD might find a little bit of a negative about Clay that is too much of an obstacle to overcome, because Clay gets in his own way sometimes. So we'll see what happens, you guys. But again, there you have it. That's my full week 1 recap. Thank you for sticking with me for however long this video is going to turn out to be in post-production. And if you don't want to miss out on my week 2 recap and all my thoughts, just like we did today, hit the big red button below and subscribe to the channel. Tap on that bell and hit the thumbs up button. Go ahead and get loud in the comments as well. And let me know, which couple do you think lasts all the way to the end after week 1. So excited for you guys to not say Jeramey and Laura. Do not say it. It's not gonna happen. Alrighty, y'all. Again, thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you at the next screening.